hey, didn't see you there. Welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, Aaron V. Today we are going over a little movie time. A movie called Extraction 2. Now you may be wondering, hey, I remember you did on this channel a long time ago. You did like admin at the movies. And I'm gonna bring that back because one, I love movies and I love firearms. I love movies that revolve around a lot of firearm usage. So my channel does take a lot of inspiration from movies that revolve heavily around firearms. So this is like cathartic for me. So today we're going over Extraction 2. Like I said, there are going to be some spoilers if you haven't seen it yet. The plan is we'll go over some of the more actiony scenes and I don't plan to spoil the end for you. So with that being said, let's dive on in. If you're wondering why I have the readers, it's a homage to Larry Vickers when he does his At the Movies series, which he hasn't done one in a long time, which kind of does bum me out. Larry, where you at, man? All right, first scene we're going over in Extraction 2. So let me back up. The context for the movie, it has Chris Hemsworth playing Tyler Rake, and all they dude. His background is he's an SAS, former SAS guy. He has a tattoo on him. You can see when he's getting healed up in the movie. He's a high-speed cool guy, right? He's pretty much invincible. If you haven't seen the first Extraction, I would recommend you go watch that. So upon entering the prison, he's in there, he's going through, he's like following all the signs that a guy left, right? So one thing I love about this off the rip is that his kit. So way better than the last movie. It looks much more squared away, it looks much more enjoyable. His kit from the first movie when he's in India, it looks like a literal Amazon like airsofter noob kit. It's like the kit you would go to an airsoft field and if you saw a bunch of those guys versus a bunch of your boys, you'd be like, oh, we're gonna mop the floor with these guys. They think they have cool kit. What makes up for it is that Tyler Rake is of course unstoppable. So, and the guns are actually pretty squared away in the first movie too, for the most part. So that's one of my big enjoyments about this off the rip is that the kit overall looks way better, way better. I also love the newer guns they have in there, or the guns themselves. So I went on to IMFDB, they had a great list of all the firearms used in the movie. I believe off this first scene, Tyler Rake is using a Daniel Defense style AR, and he's got a bunch of accoutrement on there, like an EOTech EXPS3, I wanna say, G33 magnifier, he has the PEC 15, he even has a mod light on there, which is not surprising because, I mean, they look great. I always say that, and it was only a matter of time before Hollywood would pick them up, and I think he's running a Surefire can. Let me see. Actually, funny enough, I take that back. I don't know exactly what can he's running. All right, so he's using an entirely Daniel Defense gun with some Magpul and BCM furniture. So he actually has some pretty advanced parts on the gun. He even has a fixed front sight post in front of the PEC, and they even have a wrap around the suppressor itself. You don't usually see that in Hollywood a lot, so that's impressive, and I like that a lot. So I'm not gonna go too much into the tactics of stuff. I will say that, of course, it's an action movie, and I do love the high-octane adrenaline action of it. When I was watching it, I was like, ooh, that's scary. Ooh, I don't wanna experience that. I love the filming of the movie, and I enjoyed that aspect of it. It's a lot of non-stop go one takes, and I think that is a really fun format as opposed to like older Hollywood. Like the Jason Bourne era of action movies are a bunch of cuts to make them seem like super crazy and high speed. This goes the exact opposite where there's like no cuts and all the cuts are hidden within the shot to make it all seem like one take. So I like that a lot and I think that's really fun. As someone that makes YouTube videos, I always try and get to what a fraction of this is. I don't think with my skills I ever get to as close as this is cool, but it does inspire guys like me to make content for you guys. So it is always a treat to review. So you know that one drill like where you see going around social media? It's like a couple of guys did them where they have like a bunch of targets all around them and they're like doo, 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 and they're like shooting around them like super close and everyone's making fun of them. Well, they actually do it in this movie and everyone made fun of those guys until Tyler Rake does it and it looks super cool. But at like in the prison break scene, he has a great little like he's shooting around getting a bunch of guys off him. It's very Hollywood, but it's pretty fun. I like it. You know what? Let those guys have their training days. Let them do that. We all make fun of them until you're getting jumped by a giant prison yard. I wonder if Hollywood saw that meme or the guy doing that. Yeah. And was like, this is it. This is real. Yeah, okay, yeah, put that in. Oh, yeah, it's like the credit card meme. Put it in. So next we'll pick up on the train scene they got out of the prison. It was a pretty fun little scene, like a bunch of vehicle fighting. I dig it. I'm usually a pretty positive person and I always admire the level of dedication that goes into filming. But there's a few things about the train scene involving the helicopters that I want to nitpick. So Tyler Rake comes out of the train and he's looking at a helicopter that's kind of buzzing the train that they're on. So he starts shooting at it with his .45. Here's the thing about helicopters. For the most part, helicopters usually aren't up armored. I'm looking at the helicopter model in this movie, and granted, I could be wrong, and I totally am open to that. But from the helicopter that I'm looking at, I don't think it's going to be an armored helicopter. And now if it is, of course, it's a no-brainer. Yeah, it's going to stop at 45, right? It's Hollywood. From a lot of the helicopters that I've flown in, majority of them are pretty much tin cans. Most of your small arms are going to zip right through that helicopter. A lot of the more military helicopters would have some up armoring, I believe. If it was a not armored helicopter like I suspect it is, I think that 45 ACP would go right through. If it did have armor to some capacity, I could be punching out of my lane, not being a helicopter armor expert, but this is me like, all right, now we're starting to get into some of the zone that I can start to nitpick. That's what this is. Of course, one of the best parts about this movie is Tyler Rake's sick haircut. I don't know if I accidentally got the same haircut as Tyler Rake. Oops. All right, so after Tyler Rake shoots at a helicopter with his Glock 21, he goes into the train and grabs an M240 Bravo, then comes out, and one of his mercenary buddies is already getting hosed by the helicopter. Now, my problem with this, choreographically wise, is I think that helicopter would have been smoked off the rip by that mercenary that had that, he had Mark 46. It's a 5.56 belt fed. I even think if the helicopter had magical Hollywood plot armor, I think even that belt fed 5.56 would chew up that helicopter and the bad guys on it pretty bad. And even if they are up armored on the outside of the helicopter, saying the bad guys, right? If they have their kit on, they're still gonna get chewed up in the legs and wherever else by that 5.56 round to some capacity until maybe they do take out that guy on the back of the train. Now, Tyler comes out with his M240 Bravo and starts laying down the hate, and that's gonna be that 7.62 by 51 round, which is going to even eviscerate this helicopter even worse. As pretty much by that point, I don't know what the armor capabilities is for helicopter armor, especially when it comes to 7.62. Helicopters defy the laws of physics, so I don't know what goes into them yet again, even if they do have armor. But if this doesn't have armor, it's going to get turned into the hottest of Swiss cheese. So Chris Hemsworth, being a meat stud, hip fires with the M240 Bravo. I think you could have gotten away with firing from the shoulder. I could fire an M240 Bravo from the shoulder. And if it's Chris Hemsworth, he's pretty freaking stacked, so.
He looks just like me.
He looks just like Savio. That's crazy. It's nuts. He could easily fire from the shoulder and I think wreck that helicopter in like 2 seconds, because 7.62 from a 240 Bravo, a bunch of it is going to annihilate a helicopter of that size and all the bad guys on it. They shouldn't even have a chance to get off, which happens, but there's also more helicopters in this train scene. So in this part of the movie, a lot of the context, the bad guys they're in Georgia, they're doing an extraction, hence the movie. Roll credits. They're doing an extraction in Georgia, the country, not the state. Not the down south. So the bad guys are like these drug lords that run the country, so their resources could be very deep and they could have armored helicopters. Okay, leave me alone.
Stop talking about the helicopter.
Okay, I'll stop. I'll move to something else and I'll come back to the helicopter. Helicopters in movies. All right, so some bad guy Nagazi, I think their names are a little bit similar to Nazi. So the Nagazi bad guys, they dismount from the helicopter and they get onto the plane. Off the rip, I'm noticing something I don't like, and if it's like how I said, that they're this paramilitary unit and they have a crazy amount of funding. Some of the guys are getting off the helicopter with like bone stock AKMs or underfolder AKs. They have no attachments whatsoever. To me, it's kind of like, I don't like that. I figured they would have had like some sort of red dot, because a lot of them have face armor. And if they're trying to get a cheek weld with irons, if they have face armor on, that's gonna be really hard. If you ever tried that, I'm going to nitpick this, it's not easy. Now, granted, I can see them expecting to get into a close quarter combat fighting on this train, which they do. So if they're already kind of planning for different mission sets and they're expecting like, hey, this is our loadout for what we do, I assume they don't train specifically for stopping train getaways. I assume that. So for them to have like bone stock AKs with the kit that they do, to me, it seems a little bit like under planning and a little bit of lazy like Hollywood gearing, because one of the guys gets off and he has a pretty tricked out AK. He's got an optic and he's got a grenade launcher underneath, so I like that. It seems like they're taking a shortcut for arming. I would have gone with more maybe not sub guns, but like maybe cooler tricked out sub guns. Realistically, I'd want a rifle like in this. Me personally, I'd want like a 300 blackout suppressed, and I would just rock that. All right, so I'm looking at the Georgian guys when they dismount from the helicopter to get on top of the train. I'm looking at some of their kit and I can't quite tell if they have any cool like Eastern Bloc milsurp gear, but I do know who has some cool milsurp gear. The sponsor of this video, Americana Pipedream Apparel. Wow, what a segue. I stayed up all night thinking about that segue. Guys, Americana Pipedream is an excellent sponsor of what I do here at the channel. They support us through thick and thin, and they have a plethora of awesome stuff. I often call them fantastic Zoomers, but they have awesome, fantastic, not Zoomer stuff, a bunch of old milsurp gear, and they're even getting into selling night vision. They're selling night vision over at Americana Pipedream Apparel. Savio, did you know that?
I did know that, and it's pretty cool.
It's pretty freaking cool. I'm proud of them. They're getting after it, and they just moved into a new warehouse, so they have a bunch more stuff coming down the pipeline. They don't just sell milsurp stuff, but they sell a bunch of other cool things on there. So go check out the website, show them some love, and let them know that I sent you. All right, now we get back to Tyler Rake. All right, so we get to the girl boss fight scene. So listen, I have nothing against strong, independent women. I really don't. But statistically speaking, if you have two full grown-ass men that aren't just grown-ass men, but these guys trained to kill and they're actual, like, very good fighters, going against another grown-ass woman who's also trained to kill and a very good fighter, 2 versus 1, especially when it comes to a woman, she's gonna lose. But for the sake of Hollywood, she's gonna win. I get that. Realistically, it's kind of like, it always takes me out of it in that aspect of watching a movie, and like you have that girl boss fight moment. She does kind of get her ass kicked a little bit in this scene, and she barely gets out, which I do appreciate. But realistically, we all know, like, there's a very small majority of women that can take on men in actual fighting like this. And those men that they're taking on, if they're taking on like actually scary dudes that would easily kill me, I don't think it's gonna pan out to how they expect. But that's some Hollywoodism, that's some girl bossisms, and that's some, my brother in Christ, we're living in the feminism era. That may give me some heat from the progressive crowd, I don't care, and you know that is true and biology is real. Okay, moving on. Okay, so when I watched this scene in the movie, this was the one that kind of really took me out of it for a little bit. And granted, the movie's overall still pretty good. Few things to break down here, and we're getting very autistic when it comes to the gun topic. So he picks up one of the dead mercs who has a backpack-mounted minigun, and he picks it up and he starts ripping into the helicopter. Okay, we've already established that I don't think the helicopters are armored. So if he is shooting this minigun at the helicopter, it's going to eviscerate that helicopter, all right? If there's anything that Hollywood does, is that sometimes they may overplay the power of certain guns. So in this case, Hollywood really underplays the power of the minigun. Savio, you saw what a minigun does in real life. If anything, a minigun, when I shot a minigun, it feels like you have the power of God in your hands. And if it's shooting at an aluminum tin can like a helicopter, and if it's using a 7.62x51 round, it is going to absolutely like implode a helicopter. It can cut a minivan in half. What do you think it's gonna do to a helicopter in the sky? Everyone in there is gonna get turned into pink mist. The thing's gonna like fall apart and disintegrate. I shouldn't say implode. It's gonna like disintegrate from the sky. Power aside, here's what really bugs me. The minigun itself, as far as the miniguns I've seen, it looks like a really small minigun. Now, handheld miniguns with a backpack setup exist. So realistically, this could happen. The problem is that if you ever watch the footage, and I'm gonna reference another famous person, it's gonna be Matt Best. There's a short of Matt Best on YouTube of him shooting a minigun, and Matt Best isn't a small dude. He's pretty strong, he's pretty like muscular. He's shooting a minigun and he has it braced against his body, and off the get-go, he has to really learn to dial it in for the recoil. And towards the end of the video, he does, and he starts to figure it out. But Tyler picks it up, and he's holding it like willy-nilly, no bracing, and accurately without thinking, he just hoses the helicopter, like no trouble. The minigun has recoil, and it has a lot of recoil, so it's not like a very easy gun to pick up and start shooting. Now we're going really down a rabbit hole. There are 5.56 miniguns, so I don't know if that is a 5.56 minigun, and if that's the case, I still think it would melt that helicopter. From what I saw on IMFDB, they were saying that that is in fact a M134D minigun, which I have shot in real life. I shot at the Dillon range. So a lot of the recoil, a lot of the weapons handling there really like took me out of it. And granted, I haven't personally shot the minigun freehand. I've shot them when they're mounted up to a truck.
Which moved the truck.
Which moved the truck.
Amount of torque.
Yeah, it really moved the truck on its suspension. So shooting it freehand and there being like zero recoil, that kind of bugged me a lot. I think that's not too accurate. And then, as far as like a movie shot goes, you can see Tyler Rake, Chris Hemsworth, he's shooting the minigun, and then even after the helicopter crashes and he goes down, he's still like spraying. So the choreography there is a little off and the timing's off. So it's like, they were probably like, hey, keep shooting, and then the timing, it didn't line up. So that scene, I think, of the entire movie kind of like was probably one of the worst. And they were like, we got this sick minigun scene. And I'm over here, this random YouTuber that's like, I hate it. I don't know. That one of all the scenes, it just really worked out for Tyler Rake. Thank God he's like the freaking Terminator. All right, Have I missed anything else? Did I nitpick that scene enough? I was like waiting for that scene. I was like, oh, I'm gonna destroy this on camera. All right, so at this point, Tyler Rake, he has an AR-10 style setup. One thing that does bug me about this movie entirely is lack of ear pro. Especially, I mean, I get it. It's Hollywood, and they're not gonna necessarily need ear pro, and they want to look as cool as they can. And no one looks cool when you're being ultra safe. As someone who has shot a multitude of 7.62 battle rifles, an AR-10 is not a quiet gun, especially in an urban environment like that. It's loud in the desert where there is a bunch of sound dissipation. In an urban environment like that, the sound is going to reverberate off a bunch of stuff and is going to be very noisy. So it's going to hurt your ears. Now, if you're just a superhuman like Tyler Rake, naturally you can say off and it don't matter. Yeah, the gun has a pretty solid setup, cool LPVO, it has like an in-gall, it has what looks like another mod light. So the armor is on set. Shout out to you guys. I think you guys did great for a lot of the arming of the actors. You guys did a really good job. You had a good eye for detail in that aspect. I like that about you and I appreciate that. You can't really do anything when it comes to the VFX, because another thing I don't like is not just the lack of ear pro, because how loud an AR-10 would be, but how this gun reports in the movie. And overall, this is probably one of my biggest gripes in the movie is the sound of the guns themselves. They don't sound like the realistic versions of those gunshots, even in the environments that they would be in. As a gun guy, when I see that the audio doesn't match what I'm seeing, granted I know they're doing a shootout and stuff like that, and props to them for using such cool guns. What I want to do in this video is actually show you where we can, and a side-by-side of my previous videos of me shooting, and compare the calibers to when they're actually shooting on screen of what it would sound like. Granted, there's gonna be some mismatch from the desert shooting to, say, the outdoor shooting of the urban environment that they're in, especially when they also get into the indoor setting. Let's compare the gunshots real quick, like a rapid gunshot comparison.
And go.
And go! Well, gentlemen, this was a quick little look at the movie Extraction 2. I am a big fan of movies, like I said, and I wanted to dive on into this. So, overall, I will say the movie gets a thumbs up. I like it. I like the gunplay. I like what it's doing with all the tactical gear. I like the attention to detail. Of course, it's not perfect in my mind. There's a few things I could tweak, but that is art. Art, a lot of times, is in the eye of the beholder. And for Hollywood, I think Sam Hargrave, the director, did a great job. It's action-packed, it's very nitty-gritty and violent, and I like that. It's a fun thing seeing Hollywood advance kind of with gun culture and how gun culture can also advance Hollywood. Because one thing I love is how Hollywood hates like gun culture and gun owners, yet they project this detailed example of firearms ownership and badass gear and gunplay to us, which in turn makes us consume it and we take inspiration from it. And then we also advance gun culture, which they look at and take from. So it's this nice little, like, I think Hollywood looks at gun culture and they're like, we hate them, but we can take from them inspiration. So that's my guess.
What would you rate it? Out of 1 to 10?
All right, if I was gonna rate the movie out of 1 to 10, I would give it like a solid 7. So why it's a 7 out of 10 is that it doesn't have like a super realism factor. Like, yeah, it has like a realistic violence, but that realistic violence is like a few notches over of where realistic violence usually takes place. Why like Saving Private Ryan's and movies like Heat are so highly regarded is because that it's like at the perfect level of realistic violence, right? Like, you're watching it and you're like surprised the protagonist somehow got out alive. With Extraction 2, you're watching it and you're like, how is he not dead? He's a freaking Superman. They do things in the movie to hurt him, but he's never truly hurt because he's freaking Tyler Rake. He's the unstoppable Chris Hemsworth. Is my Australian accent getting better? Gentlemen, I appreciate you guys watching to the end. As always, if you want to support the channel, feel free to check out Patreon. An excellent place to support the channel, the type of art that you want to see. On Patreon, we have exclusive content, early access to videos, behind the scenes style content, as well as a Discord. Stay up late, talk about Anna Day Armas, as well as merchandise. Merchandise helps out the channel greatly. Rock some swag, let your mom know you're on track to finding a girlfriend, getting a wife, and making a bunch of babies. Somehow the Administrative Results merch does that. As always, gentlemen, stay easy, stay breezy. I'll catch you guys on the flip. Oh, I forgot to say, let me know what movie you guys want me to review next. Leave it in the comments down below. If you see the movie that you want reviewed, interact with that comment. Make it go to the top. Make it sizzle to the, ferment to the top. Get it up. Just make it known that you want that movie reviewed, and we'll do that movie. Okay, now we close out. Helicopters and movies.